To you. Thank you for staying with us here on Hard Facts. It's a pleasure to know that you are there. Yes, Maryann couldn't be here today, like I said earlier. So it's just me, and I'm glad that you've been with us since 3 p.m. and we've had great conversation. We've talked about the issue of cooking gas. We've talked about the issue of Lekki Ekpe Expressway and how bad the situation is. We've talked about former Minister Naji and his resignation, and we talked about the suspended tinted glass permit by the Nigerian police force owing to a court order that they confirmed that they've received. So yes, we've also talked about the economy of Nigeria in the last 65 years. All right, now let's expand our conversation on Nigeria. This time, let's talk about how an American lawmaker is claiming that Christians in Nigeria are being persecuted, he has claimed that, in fact, not just him alone, some others have said the same thing about Christians, Nigeria being the deadliest for Christians in the world. I've got David Hundeyin on the show. He joins virtually this afternoon. David, good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining Hard Facts today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, David is a journalist who has been, dropping some commentary on this particular conversation. David, let's start this way. Ted Cruz's campaign against Nigeria. What's your how do you see this? What's your view on it?
Well, I guess the most useful way to understand what is going on for, I guess, a geopolitical beginner is to examine what Ted Cruz has said about places around the world where the exact thing he claims is happening in Nigeria are actually happening. So, for example, what has Ted Cruz said about what is going on in Gaza, for example? And that gives you a very useful window into what is not being said as against what is being said. And what is not being said is that clearly the issue here is not whether there is persecution taking place against a certain group of people or not. It's not whether there are killings targeting a certain group disproportionately or not. That is actually not the issue that the Americans are concerned with. The issue they are, in fact, concerned with is their geopolitical interests. So depending on where those interests lie, it might be expedient to them to play up a certain narrative, whether real or imagined. In this case, there is definitely an element of truth to it. I myself have covered some of these stories in the past. However, that is not to say that what Ted Cruz is saying is actually, in fact, true. Because there are several ways to tell lies. One of the ways you can tell lies is to lie by omission. And what he is not saying, for example, is that, yes, in parts of the Middle Belt and the north of Nigeria, Christians, and this is backed up by data, by the way, Christians do die, and they do so, in some cases, disproportionately as compared to other populations. However, Christians are not the only ones dying, and they're not the only ones targeted in these places. What he's intentionally not mentioning is that the key thing that all these places affected by this violence in Nigeria happen to have in common is that these are all areas which are rich in the very exact resources that the United States government is after, specifically rare earth mineral resources. At a point when over 70% of rare earths are controlled by China, and as you know, there's a trade war going on between the US and China, and the US is trying to secure as much of these rare earth minerals as possible for the sake of its future economic and shooting war with China, which is going to happen. It only makes sense that any area which is rich in those resources and which the US government considers to be ruled by a weak government, you're going to start hearing these narratives about them. This has happened multiple times before. I mean, we're all old enough here to remember when there was a time when this exact campaign was rolled out regarding Iraq and Saddam Hussein supposedly had weapons of mass destruction. Iraq was going to destroy the world. And in order to save the world from the threat of this horrible dictator in Baghdad, then the US and NATO had to combine their military strength and roll into Iraq and basically neutralize Saddam Hussein. And obviously, as we found out at leisure, this whole narrative was constructed on a fiction. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein was not a threat to anyone in any way. And the actual objective of going into Iraq was not to fight terrorism or to neutralize any weapons of mass destruction. The actual goal of invading Iraq was to seize resources. That is what it has always been about. That is what it will always be about. So for those who, I guess, aren't really tapped into how the world works and the rules on which the geopolitical world operates, that's what they need to understand. That when you see characters like Ted Cruz making these statements, right, these sort of dyed-in-the-wool neoconservative, members of the American establishment, these war hawks making these noises. When you see people like Eric Prince, for example, who is the CEO of the founder of the now disgraced Blackwater mercenary group, a mercenary group whose behavior was so criminal that it was actually prosecuted by the U.S. government. When you see people like that, then coming out in public and saying that they would like to lead military expeditions into Nigeria, supposedly to save Christians, then you really need to ask yourself, what is the objective here? Is the objective for a group of white Americans to save a group of Black African Christians whom they didn't know existed last week? Or what could be in service to their geopolitical goals that these populations have that they want? That's a more useful way of examining it. And once you see the world through those lenses, it's easier to sort of see through the noise and not get lost in the narratives that people try to construct. Because I can assure you that there's no member of the US establishment, be it a conservative, be it a liberal, be it a war hawk, be it a dove, whatever it is, that has any interest in protecting any group or any subset of Nigerians from another subset of Nigerians or Africans. As far as those people are concerned, we are all one single thing. We're all a monolith. So the idea that whether Christians are in fact being targeted with violence or not, that somehow is a problem for the US government to fix. Anybody who holds that idea in their head in this part of the world needs to wash their head with soap, needs to get that idea out of their head. That's a dangerous idea. That's a destructive idea. There's a lot of historical precedent, including very recent precedent. You remember Nigeria is basically 2 borders away from like the world's biggest example of why US military intervention in your country is a very terrible idea, right? Libya, this wasn't that long ago. So coming from the neighborhood that we come from and having lived through the experiences, very recent experiences that we have lived through, we should know better by now.
David, we're going to unpack everything that you have said now, because I know it's an introductory statement that you needed to make clear with no ambiguity, anywhere whatsoever. But we still need to unpack a few things. A few weeks ago, the vice president of Nigeria was at the UNGA 80, and I made the position of the country known. Soon afterwards, we started hearing all of these things. I heard what you said about resource and access and all of those things, which is also a factor. But my question is, why are all of these coming right after the vice president's speech? Is there a connection to it, or this is purely based on rare earth minerals and resource, Nigeria's local resource?
So it's a bit of both. There's a bit of, I guess, what you would call political opportunism. So it would be that, first of all, if you recall, the vice president's speech came, I believe, the day after or 2 days after an official UN report designated what was happening in Gaza as a genocide.
That's right.
So basically, at that point, at the point we're in now, the official verdict of history is that the US and its vassal states in the Middle East are in fact committing a genocide against an indigenous population. So at that exact moment, there needed to be something to change the narrative, to deflect at that point. So it was a very convenient thing to bring up that, well, even if a genocide is being committed in Gaza against the majority Muslim population, well, think about this other country, a few thousand kilometers to the west of Gaza, a country that most of you cannot find on the map and which you probably didn't know existed last week. And let's start talking about this other thing,
Mm.
right? So that we can stop talking about this. It's a tactic of bad faith argument, which is called the whataboutism,
Mm.
right? So I know there's a genocide, an officially legally recognized genocide going on in Gaza, a genocide that has been recognized by the ICC, the ICJ, and the UN as a genocide. That is happening. But instead of talking about that, what about this other thing, which we will then tenuously call a genocide, even though there actually hasn't been any legal proclamation by any of these institutions designating it as such. So there's this 9 out of 10 here. But instead of talking about the 9 out of 10,
Yeah.
let's look at this tenuous 3 or 4 out of 10. And somehow that's supposed to take attention away from the obvious 9 out of 10. So that's I guess the opportunism that you're referring to. But over and above that, there has been a clear and unmistakable geopolitical movement over the past few months and years that has led up to this moment. And what I need Nigerian Christians in particular to understand is that the fact of your religious faith, your religious identity, your religious belief is, in the eyes of those who run global geopolitics, is nothing more than a calculation on a chessboard.
It's nothing
Right?
more
Nobody
than a
cares whether
strategy, a calculation, a chess move, or something. That's what it is to them.
nobody actually cares whether you're a Christian or you're Muslim or you worship a shigidi, you are atheist, whatever it is. It's actually not important in the geopolitical calculation of the world. What is important is, first of all, what resources are present where you are. How can you and the resources under your feet be useful to those who consider themselves to be the countries that actually matter? That is the calculation that is being made. So the fact of you being Christian or you being Muslim or you being Igbo or being Hausa or being Yoruba, whatever you are, the world outside doesn't really care about these things. These things are only useful for the purpose of dividing you strategically so that some sort of geopolitical or military objective can be reached. And by the way, we have a very, very long history of having these exact games being practiced on us and having these tactics used successfully against us. So the very last group of people in the world, in my opinion, who should be falling for this is Africans. We have 500 years of recent history showing us that these geopolitical actors from the global north don't actually see us as anything other than just one black monolith. That's what they see us as, right? So the other sub-identity layers that we have historically have only ever been useful to them for the purpose of strategic division. So, this one is classified as Igbo, which is an ethnic identity that really didn't exist 200 or 300 years ago. This one is classified as Yoruba, which is another sort of ethnic panoply which didn't exist 200 or 300 years ago. And then you are pitted against each other. Someone knocks your heads together so that the things under your feet, which are the real prize, you continue hemorrhaging those things while you're focused on fighting this non-existent fight, this baseless fight against each other. And it's the same strategy being deployed again here, that someone is coming out to tell you that, hey, this violence happening in your country, that instead of you to see it as a national problem for you to fix using your sovereign instruments of state, instead of you seeing it as a problem of state capacity, which is fundamentally what it is, because when you have these non-state actors that have the capacity to overrun your state actors, your security agencies, that's what it is. Your sovereignty is being violated. And instead of you seeing it as that, you rather start seeing it as a religious quarrel, an ethnic dispute. And then you start being receptive to the idea of an outsider coming in to further violate that sovereignty, which is already being violated, and somehow that's supposed to be the solution. So currently, your problem is at an amplitude of 5 out of 10. And what is being presented to you as a solution is something which is going to bring it up to an amplitude of 9.8 out of 10. It's going to worsen your situation. It's not going to solve your problem at all. So I really do wish that people would analyze this more dispassionately and stop sort of letting that immediate rush of emotion, because your religious identity has been mentioned, dictate their reaction. Because I promise you, this has nothing to do with your religion. This has nothing to do with your ethnicity or your tribe or whatever. And this has everything to do with the things under your feet, because the global north places more value on the things under your feet than on the people who are walking on top of those things. Global north sees value in the minerals that are buried in African soil, but not the people who are walking above those minerals. And it's very important that we understand that.
You know, David, why this conversation is very critical is the fact that and there's no gainsaying it, that we can't shy away from it. Propaganda is very, very powerful, and propagandists, they know how to use this weapon pretty well. All they need is just an iota of truth, some sprinkle of truth in what they're saying, and then they expand it. And they know that, especially in Nigeria, we're a very religious people, where, I mean, you can do anything to our father, we may not even care. But once you touch our religion, all hell will let loose, and that will be, we don't care again, whatever happens. And I guess my question is, and I know that you've mentioned it, but I just wanted to expatiate on it. Like, what do we stand to lose in a situation whereby, if anything happens to us personally, individually, we may even forgive the person. You slapped me, don't do it again. But if it comes to our religion like this, you cannot beg them. You cannot beg Nigerians about this. What do we stand to lose should this catch fire? You, me, other brilliant journalists and commentators, we're trying as much as possible to educate people. And like you have repeatedly said, we've seen this before. And when you even tell people that this has happened before, it's almost like nobody's listening to you. Perhaps if we look at what we stand to lose, should we give this? Should we give this, that energy that the propagandists in those places are hoping that would give it? What are those things that we stand to lose, David?
Well, it's very difficult to explain the concept of loss to people who believe that they have nothing to lose. And I think that's one of the psychological problems that faces the Nigerian population. The Nigerian population has been conditioned into thinking that where they are is the absolute worst place in the world. There's absolutely nothing worse, and there's absolutely nothing that can be worse than where they are. And historically, that sentiment has been exploited multiple times to the end of getting Nigerians to a place where it's even worse than where they were before.
Wow.
What I would say is, again, Nigeria is 2 national borders away from the biggest example of where this has happened. Libya is literally 2 borders away from Nigeria. So it's Nigeria, Chad, Libya, basically.
David, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you. When we return from this break, I will come back to this particular conversation. We'll take it from there. Lagos, we need to take a quick break. When we return, David is still here, and we'll have this conversation further. Stay with us, please.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We'll be right back.
Hey ladies, do you know Nigerian women are celebrated for their radiant glowing skin? That's right. But with a hot sun, protecting our skin can be a challenge. Good news! Perfectio by Vitabiotics UK gives you targeted support for great looking skin, hair and nails. Packed with biomarine collagen, botanical extracts, and other micronutrients which contribute to skin hydration and radiance while reducing other skin imperfections. Available in pharmacies near you. Perfectil, beauty from within.
Little body, big moves. Little brain, big learning. Your little child is eager to do big things. Every sachet of Cerelac Junior comes with the nutrition they need: natural grains, protein, and iron to support their physical growth, learning, and development. So you can fully enjoy your little one's big moments of growth.
Hey, Omo, see package. This is what I call full house.
Yes, sir. That's me. I full.
Huh? Who's talking about you? I'm talking about this Peak Yogurt Drink Full House Pack in your hand.
The Peak Yogurt Drink 1 liter Full House Pack with more refreshment contains fresh cow milk. Share and enjoy full house goodness filled with essential vitamins and minerals. Peak. Reach for your peak.
This is what goodness tastes like. Golden caramel, creamy buttermint, and rich coffee. There's a Cadbury candy for every moment.
Cadbury caramel, Cadbury coffee, Cadbury buttermint. Sweet, smooth, and full of flavor. Whether you're chilling at home or on the move, there's a Cadbury candy for every mood.
Yeah, there's a Cadbury candy for every moment.
Guess what, Nigeria? The Kellogg Superstar Quiz Show is back with season 4. Get ready to watch young superstars from schools across Nigeria battle it out in the ultimate contest of knowledge, speed, and fun. Catch all the excitement from 12th October on Z-World, DSTV channel 166, and GoTV channel 30 every Saturday and Sunday at 10 a.m. sharp. It's going to be a thrilling journey of learning, laughter, and superstar moments, and you don't want to miss it.
Superstar Quiz Show!
Hey, Omo! See package! This is what I call Full House.
Yes, sir. That's me.
Who's talking about you? I'm talking about this Peak Yogurt Drink Full House Pack in your hand.
The Peak Yogurt Drink 1 liter Full House Pack with more refreshment contains fresh cow milk. Share and enjoy full house goodness filled with essential vitamins and minerals. Peak. Reach for your peak.
Every day is about winning with one play on Nigeria Info. On Nigeria Info, daily winnings is now over 150,000 naira. Just go to oneplay.ng or dial *347 *880 *3#. Play with as little as 500 naira, and in a few seconds, your ticket is in the draw. The more you play, the better your chances of winning every day on the Morning Crossfire, WhatsApp Lagos, and Game On shows on weekdays, and the Football Frenzy shows on weekends. But that's not all. Every Friday, there will be a 500,000 naira jackpot. Playing during the week automatically qualifies you for the weekly jackpot. Your chances of winning are the same whether you play on oneplay.ng or dial *347 *880 *3#. Remember to play responsibly. Not suitable for persons under the age of 18. OnePlay is a registered trademark under Lasho Trading Services Limited, licensed by the Lagos State Lotteries and Gaming Commission.
Who's got it cheaper?
Because how else do you explain these prices? Royster potato chips in sour cream and onion, hot and spicy and original. Now 2,700 naira at Boku. Others now 3,300 naira. 75cl aqua clear water, 130 naira only. Inside market, 200 naira. Go Vita sachet unko, 150 naira only. Outside unko, 250 naira.
Oya, rush check Boku for better prices. If Boku abi no Boku.
This one where you dey share Coke and Fanta today. What's it happen? My guy, you never hear them say 35cl plastic bottle don't drop to 300 naira. 300 naira. No be 350 we dey buy am before. Yes, so the price don't change. Now 300 naira now. Meaning say you dey save 50 naira for every bottle. This one na real small price, big refreshment. Oh yeah, my guy, you say take one bottle.
No lose guard, grab your favorite 35cl plastic bottle for Coke, Fanta or Sprite for just 300 naira for any store for your side. Promo go end when our finish. Coca-Cola, real wonder.
New Lafarge Water Shield Cement now confirm. #1 waterproof cement for Naija. Yeah. Ogbonge cement for waterlogged areas. #1 waterproof cement for Naija. Yeah. New Lafarge Water Shield Cement #1. New Lafarge waterproof cement now confirm. One time. Put full stop for water wahala. With Lafarge Water Shield Cement, water go collect. If water jam house, Lafarge, so confirm. Cement, new Lafarge Water Shield Cement, na confirm.
Put full stop for water wahala.
In the
cooking game, you need a winning game plan. I'm not just talking about your fresh ingredients, utensils, or cooking skills. I'm talking about your choice of seasoning. My game plan is incomplete without Maggi chicken flavor. Made with a flavorful formation of onions, celery, turmeric, it's my game changer. Elevate the taste of your everyday dishes with delicious rich chicken flavor. Oh yeah, let's go.
New Maggi chicken flavor, my game changer.
It's back to school time with Boku. School fees choke, but food? Not inside Boku. Yes, so because 50 kg Big Bull rice of 66,000 naira don't be 59,000 naira. The 25 kg of 34,000 naira encore now 31,000 naira. Hey, even 5 Alive Poppy Orange and 5 Alive Berry Blast follow drop to 800 naira and 900 naira now. That's not be all, because 60 cl Coke, Fanta and Sprite now only 340 naira each. Big Indomie chicken unga 350 naira only. And no forget golden penny spaghetti for only 950 naira. Iboku abi no boku.
This is not just football. This is JJ Ball X, the game where every doggo, every race counts. Here, your football skills pay off. As you raise the ball, you fit dey raise your account balance. So if you think you're the next JJ and the shop for you, get on the BetKing app. Use the promo code JJBollex. Tap on casino. Click on JJ Bollex to play and start winning. Remember, not for persons under the age of 18. Play responsibly.
My ions, please, can't get enough. My ions, please, give it to me now. It go rehydrate you, yeah. Replenish your ions with Pocari Sweat. Rehydrate you faster, easy we observe. Pocari Sweat, give it some more. Pocari Sweat.
Is that Alfie playing football in the rain?
It's Toby Chio.
My goodness. When did he grow up?
That's it with kids, though.
It's amazing how your child grows up before your eyes. Enable their thriving development with the new NanKid 4 with HMOs to support your child's development, probiotics, and high-quality proteins to support age-appropriate growth. NanKid 4. Nourish your child's potential.
The news you need, the conversation you hear, the station you love.
Petrol exports hit 371 billion naira amid heavy import reliance.
Resident doctors give federal government 30 days to address doctors' demands.
Jonathan will return to Aso Rock as president, says Professor Jerry Ghana.
Those who actually frustrated him out of office may be so desperate to wish him back.
Workers have a right, a constitutionally afforded right, to join unions or not to join.
Madam ADC gives Article ultimatum to pick membership card. So it's not even pick this membership card. All these problems.
We are not all we have. They have other things.
Or we're not enough.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk. This is Hard Facts.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Welcome back to Hard Facts. This Wednesday evening, it's 5:34 from our studios, going on 35. I'm Sheriff Quadry. We're broadcasting live from Etimi and Christian Victoria Island, Lagos, Nigeria. You can watch this show on Facebook and on YouTube. Nigeria Info 99.3 is how you can watch this show. I've got on the show today, I've got David Hundeyin. David Hundeyin is an investigative journalist. He's an author. He's also a commentator. He's worked in different fields, from tech to finance to politics to governance, even to culture as well. He's done quite a huge work in those areas, and he joins us virtually this evening. David, thank you again for joining us. Before the break, we're talking about what we stand to lose as a people. Should we fall for this propaganda?
Yes. And I was saying that, we're just two national borders away from the largest example, the largest cautionary tale of what happens when you allow external interests from the global north interfere, especially militarily, in your local issues. Right? If you recall, when the Libyan invasion started off, it didn't start off as an invasion. The the actors who had an interest in going into Libya to steal Libyan oil and gold didn't come saying, we are here to steal Libya's oil and gold. They came saying, Gaddafi is a terrible dictator who is oppressing his people and who is murdering civilian protesters in Benghazi, and we're here to help because we have a responsibility to protect. That was the guise under which they came. If you recall, Nigeria and South Africa actually voted in favor of the UN resolution that was used as the basis for that military campaign, because the Jedi mind trick that was played on the world was that this is not a military expedition. We're not going in there to fight a war. We're just going in there to protect civilians. Even the language they used was very clever. They didn't say we are going to launch airstrikes against the Gaddafi regime or government or whatever. Instead, they said we are going to establish a no-fly zone. So the implication that you take away from that is, oh, Gaddafi's air force is bombing Libya, and so they're establishing a no-fly zone. They're trying to protect civilians. In actual fact, what a no-fly zone means, in addition to stopping the opposition's planes from flying, is that you're also going to carry out airstrikes against the opposition's military infrastructure that can be used to facilitate flights. And that is a very, very broad description. That was a description that was so broad, in fact, that the NATO coalition conducted 7,000 airstrikes in just 8 months against Libya, under the guise of responsibility to protect civilians. I repeat, 7,000 airstrikes. These people destroyed Libya as a going concern. Libya is no longer a country. There is no longer a country called Libya, right? It doesn't say what the place, the geographical area that we refer to as Libya, doesn't have one single capital anymore, isn't ruled by one single government anymore. It's just a collection of eternally warring interests. Now, that is what was done when these same people, these exact same characters, including people like Ted Cruz, started making these exact noises about trying to help and protect some poor, oppressed, downtrodden African population 2 borders away from us. That is what was done. Libya was completely destroyed. Libyan infrastructure was destroyed. One of the things that was destroyed under this supposed responsibility to protect was the Great Man-Made River Project. For those who don't know, Libya, obviously, which is majority desert, had discovered billions of cubic feet of water in a deep underground aquifer. And the government was working on a project called the Great Man-Made River Project to pump out this water and basically turn a large district of Libya from the desert it was into a green area once again, like it was thousands of years ago. And these people came and bombed that infrastructure, bombed essentially Libya back to the Stone Age under the guise of protecting Libyans. So were they protecting Libyans, or were they in fact doing everything they could to keep a country at a certain level of poverty so that it could remain easily exploitable, so that they could take all the things they ended up taking away from it? Like, for example, the 144 tons of gold held in Libya's central bank, which vanished, or like Libyan oil, which is currently being extracted by all manner of Western interests and benefits everybody except Libyan people. So when Nigerians say things like, oh, it can't be worse than what we currently have, anything is better than this, and people are dying, we'll take help from wherever we can get it. After all, who else is going to help us? When they say things like that, they're not saying these things from a position of historical education. Because if you're aware of what happened just over a decade ago, you wouldn't be saying things like that. You would realize that as bad as you think you have it now, it absolutely can and will get worse if these people get involved. This is an internal Nigerian issue. This has to be treated as an internal Nigerian issue, and your sovereignty cannot be compromised in trying to fix this issue. Because once you compromise your sovereignty in this manner, you will never get it back. The same way the Iraqis never got their sovereignty back. They're still not a sovereign country. They're still under occupation since 2003. Same way the Libyans are never going to get their sovereignty back. They're still under de facto occupation. The same way every other country that has welcomed or that has fallen prey to these games has never gotten its sovereignty back. And again, Nigerians also need to understand that maintaining your sovereignty is not a simple matter of just having the national pride or something. Because I also see the narrative that, well, whose sovereignty have? What have we done with the sovereignty? What have we done with our independence? Why do we even need it? And what Nigerians need to understand is the tiny little measure of freedom or self-actualization that you are allowed to have, as terrible as Nigeria is, that little measure of freedom you have only exists because of the nominal sovereignty and nominal independence that you even have. If that is taken away, you will then get to find out what it means to live as a slave. And then you will discover that living under nominal sovereignty that we currently have is infinitely better than living as a slave. And that it is in fact possible for your situation to get worse. There is such a thing as something that is much worse than what you currently have. So when responding to a situation, you don't just react emotionally and say, well, nothing can be worse than this. I will take help from anybody, including Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater, or Ted Cruz, a bunch of war criminals. You don't do that. You sit down, you think things through carefully and methodically. What is in my interest here? And based on historical precedent, what is likely to happen if option A or option B is taken? And based on this information, what is the sensible decision to make? That's how rational people who have a future in this world take their decisions. You don't just take a decision because you're having an emotional reaction, a visceral reaction to something. That's not how the world works. And the world doesn't belong to such people.
David, I want us to dive deeper. I want us to look at the impact, the effect of this campaign. A lot of people, should I say, some Nigerians may think that it's just a campaign, it's not going to happen. I mean, they know that this is just a propaganda, it's not going to happen and all of that. They just wave it aside and they move on as usual. When we know, I mean, if you understand who you're dealing with, we're talking about an environment with a structured media where any campaign they latch onto, they can coordinate it pretty well and then make something that is not real look real, not just to Nigerians but to the entire world. I want you to double down on what's the effect of this? What's the impact? A lot of people may even think that this has not got anything on Nigerians, that it can affect us and everything. But some colleagues that I've spoken with are mentioning things as simple as investment opportunities, things as simple as even tourism and all of that. But let me hear from you. What do you think the impact is, or might likely be?
If you're lucky, it will be the loss of tourism and investment. If you're lucky,
that is if you're lucky.
If you're not so lucky, then again, I'm going to have to keep on referring to the examples of Libya and Iraq because they're very close, very nearby examples. These countries never recovered, and when I say never recovered, I don't just mean their economies never recovered. I mean the national psyche has received an injury which will take centuries to heal if it never heals. These countries have been functionally destroyed, right? Because I don't think people understand the grasp the import of what it means to suffer a military invasion. And I also don't think that people realize how vulnerable Nigeria is to such a thing, or how relatively close by such a possibility actually is. Because I think, again, there's that idea that Nigeria and West Africa are an island, sort of marooned away from the rest of the world. So all those things happening in places that actually matter, like Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and Gaza and Asia and whatnot, that somehow those things have nothing to do with us because we are just people of the sun, standing around by the beach, sipping our coconuts, and nobody really cares about us. That's not true at all. Because again, people need to, if the easiest way to understand what I'm trying to say is go Google geological map of Africa. Just Google that and see what comes up. And then understand that as an African living in Africa, you are sitting on what King Leopold of Belgium famously referred to as a geological scandal, right? What the world considers to be a geological scandal. Like, you are sitting on untold wealth, riches that even you aren't aware of. and that the world is very much aware of and considers to be the prize. And that being the case, that puts you in a uniquely dangerous situation. You are sitting on the things that everybody wants on the world's second most populous continent, and you basically have no defenses. You are basically there for the taking. So, of course, people who are warlike in nature and people who have the means, the capacity to take things militarily, will be looking at that and they'll think, why don't we just take it? And they've done this several times. And as I keep saying, this happened 2 borders away from Nigeria. So what makes us think that somehow we're special? Somehow it's not going to happen to us. Why wouldn't it happen to us? And again, if you are familiar with how the media run up to 2015, for example, because I think that was the last time we saw this sort of externally orchestrated media campaign taking root in the Nigerian space. So in 2015, I worked in the marketing industry at the time. And even though I didn't fully understand what I was witnessing, I was basically in the room where the bodies were being buried. And I can tell you categorically that it's like what you just said a few moments ago, that these people have the capacity to basically shape reality. They can create a reality for you that doesn't exist. They can lock you in a false reality. They can make you believe things that aren't true. And based on that belief in things that aren't true, they can make you take decisions that are self-defeating.
Right.
I remember in 2014 and 2015, there were people who had never traveled further north than Edo State before, who were in a state of near hysteria in Lagos because they were thinking that Boko Haram was about to invade Surulere or something, right? That ability to whip you up into an emotional frenzy and then take a predetermined decision that they have determined for you based on that frenzy, that is a core skill that these people have. And they have deployed this skill very recently. They did so in 2015. Because whether people accept it or not, what happened in 2015 was a foreign orchestrated regime change operation. Whether or not you like Muhammadu Buhari or you dislike Goodluck Jonathan or vice versa, the fact is the removal of Goodluck Jonathan or the electoral loss and the entry of Muhammadu Buhari was a US orchestrated regime change operation. That is what it was. And it was successful primarily because these actors have that ability, that capacity to whip large populations of people up into emotional frenzies and make them believe things that are either absolutely not true or that are adjacent to the truth and have some element of truth in them but are misleading, and then take actions based on essentially poisoned or false information. So if they could do that to the end of influencing an election and carrying out regime change, what makes you think they're not going to do that for any other purpose that may suit their geopolitical interests, for example? So if now the place that the world is in, as I tried to explain on Twitter a few days ago, there's a trade war going on essentially between BRICS on the one hand and the NATO/US empire on the other hand. And basically BRICS controls the majority of essentially the world's mineral base.
Yeah.
And is also, thanks to China, is also increasingly winning the industrial and intellectual property war. So what that means is that the people on the other side of the conversation are realizing that, hey, these guys that we used to lord it over are about to become to us what we were to them. And we don't want that to happen. So to stop that from happening, we need to ensure that we can keep up with them. We need to ensure that we can keep pace with China's industrial capacity, with China's and Russia's and Iran's military capacity. We need to make sure we can do that. And how do we make sure we can do that when we no longer control these large swathes of the world that we used to control? Well, what we do is that we strategically retreat, which has happened. So, for example, the strategic pullback from Taiwan, like they're ceding large parts of what used to be contested territory to China, and they're sort of pivoting back toward the Caribbean and South America and parts of Africa. That these are the places that we find easier to dominate, and these are the places that have the resources that we want and that we can get very easily. And guess what? Nigeria is front and center of that strategy. If you don't believe me, here's a very, very simple way to open your eyes. Where is the world's largest US consulate? The world's largest U.S. consulate. Where is it being constructed?
It's right.
Largest one, larger than the one in Baghdad.
It's right here.
Iraq, larger than the one in London. Where is it being constructed? It's on Victoria Island.
Very close to be here, yes.
So yes, we are front and center of this strategy. We are being targeted, and we are just completely oblivious about the things that are happening in front of us. What inevitably is going to happen if we don't wake up in time is that we are going to end up becoming essentially a country under direct or de facto occupation. We are going to become somebody's mineral resource farm for the purpose of extracting things that will be used to keep up with China or to fight China. That's what we are going to end up as. If we don't wake up and realize the uniquely dangerous situation that we are in. So instead of either reacting emotionally to stuff that we don't fully understand, or dismissing it, oh, this conspiracy theory, because it's too difficult for us to comprehend, and maybe our frame of reference, our frame of vision is not that big. I think the more useful thing to do at this late hour that we are in now, geopolitically, we owe it to ourselves to understand the world we are living in, understand our place in it, understand how it works, and understand what it is that we need to do to survive. And I don't use that word lightly, survive, because now it's a question of survival, right? We're at a point now where the so-called international institutions no longer have the teeth that we once thought they had. The UN has come out and said what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. And what happened? Absolutely nothing. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? That tells you that we are now back in that pre-1945 state of the world where a powerful country like Japan or Germany used to be would simply wake up, mobilize its military, march into another country and annex it. And that was that. Might was right? The world post-1945 expressly forbade that, right? The entire foundational basis of the UN was that one single country cannot do such things. Yes.
Right.
Now, that founding basis of the UN has been stripped away. Now we have the US military sitting off the coast of Venezuela, actively trying to provoke a reaction from the Venezuelan military, which will be used as an excuse to launch a full-scale military invasion of a sovereign country that has done nothing to them. Simply because Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves. It has things that they want. That is the world we are living in. So Nigerians need to lose this idea that the US cares about whether you are Christian or you are this or you are that. That is not important. What is important is what geopolitical or geostrategic value do you or the land under your feet possess to the US empire? Are you useful? Are you not? In this case, unfortunately, we are useful. We are very useful, and we are front and center of the strategy. So we need to figure out what's going on, and we need to wake the hell up.
David Hundeyin, thank you so much for joining Hard Facts today. It's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you very much for having me.
David is an investigative journalist, an author, and a commentator. It was great. Look, the conversation is so thick that I couldn't take any calls. Maybe when Maryann comes tomorrow, she can take reactions from our conversation today. But look, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it. I'm Sheriff Quadry. Thank you for being a part of Hard Facts today. I'll see you tomorrow at 7:30 on Dailies Today. Good evening to you.
You are listening to your number one station for talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk. 99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.